Bloomington Board of Park Commissioners. And if we could start, please, Julie, with the roll call.
Kathleen Mills.
Here.
Ellen Rodkey.
Here.
Israel Herrera.
Here.
Okay, thank you. And our fourth member had to be called out of town suddenly, but we do have a quorum, so we can go ahead and proceed. And first off, we always have our consent calendar, just a few smaller or reoccurring things, and then also our minutes from the previous meeting, business reports, surplus, if there is any, that sort of thing. So if we have a motion to approve the consent calendar, please.
So I move to approve the consent calendar.
Okay,
Second.
all right. And a roll call vote of all those in favor?
Ellen Rodkey.
Aye.
Kathleen Mills.
Aye.
Israel Herrera.
Aye.
Okay, motion is carried. And then next up, we always go in our section B to public hearings and appearances, and we have a Bravo Award, which is always a nice occasion that Emily Book will tell us about.
All right, good afternoon, everyone. Emily Book, Community Relations Coordinator, and we would like to recommend Marcia Davis and Ryland King for the November Bravo Award. On behalf of Crystal, we would like to recognize these two with the November Bravo Award for their dedication to the dearly departed cemetery tours. Marcia and Ryland sign up each year to volunteer to bring to life the stories of Bloomington residents who have both lived and died here. Through their volunteering, they tell the story of the Bloomington community and Rose Hill Cemetery. Marcia has volunteered as one of the ghost reenactors for the past 6 years. After attending the inaugural tour in 2017 as a participant, she signed up to be a volunteer as a reenactor for the next year, bringing with her years of experience from being an active participant in Renaissance fairs. She carefully curates her costumes and makeup each year to match the time period of the story she is reenacting. Ryland couldn't join us today, but he joined the tours in 2019 while he was a student in the Bloomington North Theater program. He has continued to volunteer since and spends hours rehearsing and perfecting his characters each year. We're very grateful to Marcia and Ryland for helping to bring the dearly departed cemetery tours to life. Crystal, would you like to say something? I think Crystal would like to say something as well.
Okay.
Yeah, hello, Crystal Ritter, Community Events Coordinator. I just want to say thank you to Marcia and Ryland both for their dedication to this event. We have, an assigned volunteer shift and commitment, and both of them every year go above and beyond, really getting into character. And we could not do this event every year without them, and it's become a very beloved event at Rose Hill Cemetery that happens every year. So thank you, Marcia.
All right, yes, thanks to Marcia and Ryland.
Bringing the dead to life year after year. It's great to receive award. I mean, you have so many great programs in Bloomington and events, and just to receive an award for having fun, I mean, it doesn't get better. So thank you.
Yes, thank you very much. Okay. I guess I didn't realize the characters coming to life were like based on real people yeah, that's very interesting. I don't know why, I guess I thought it was fictional. All right, and then in our section C, other business, first up we have the agreement with MSI for 2025 security services. Amy? You're not Amy.
I'm not Amy, but Rebecca Swift, Operations Development Division Director. I am here to present a service contract with MSI Security. Operations Division filed the request for proposal procurement process. We only received one proposal, and that was from Marshall Security. They're our current security vendor, and we are satisfied with their services. The really only change from the service agreement from past years is the cost of living was taken into account for 2025, and we did change their hours of operation just because we weren't really seeing reports come in, and that is changing it from 4 to 5 a.m. Time slot, and actually our park staff then show up to work too between 6 and 7 a.m. So no real major changes, but I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have.
So it's, Rebecca, then, so the 4 to 5 shift is, they're not covering that now, is
Correct.
that? Okay, because there wasn't, yeah.
Correct.
And then are you moving them to a different hour or just deleting that one?
Just deleting, just removing it.
Okay,
And I should also note that we are adding on Hopewell Commons to the rotation,
okay,
which will be coming online in 2025.
okay, all right. Any other questions about security contract?
So I move to approve the agreement with MSI for 2025 security services.
I'll second.
Okay, and a roll call vote?
Kathleen Mills,
Aye.
Ellen Rodkey,
Aye.
Israel Herrera.
Aye.
Okay, motion's carried. Thank you, Rebecca. Okay, and then in C2, Sean will tell us about the agreement with Touch Graphics for the tactile map installation at Switchyard. And you have some show and tell, or that's for later?
I do. I have some
Okay.
show and tell. You're fine to look at it now. If you'd like to take a closer look on it, I'm happy to answer questions on it later. There should also be some slides coming up so you can see some examples. So this is actually kind of the second time we've went through this process for this vendor to get this approval. Park staff recommends the approval of contract with Touch Graphics for the design and manufacture of a tactile accessible map at Switchyard Park. Funding is not to exceed $12,000, and the funding source is coming out of ARPA. Okay, here is some examples of this. Also, this process included a committee, and we did various things. We included people outside of parks, and Michael Shermis is here. Mike, would you like to speak? No? Okay, so we had people with accessibility issues also review the process, and Mike was key to that. So during the initial stages when we were figuring out the criteria, so how we were going to judge this, the rubric, what things were important to the project, Michael took this out to a group and had them ask them questions. Then initially, when we got samples, he also took some of the samples to them and showed them to them, so they also had comments on that. So there was a committee who graded based upon the rubric, but we also had good feedback from the outside community. Okay? I'm happy to answer any other questions.
Okay, any questions for Sean? Okay, did you want to come up and, yeah, we have time.
Hi, Michael Shermis. I'm the Human Rights Director, the ADA Coordinator for the city, and the Staff Liaison for the Council for Community Accessibility. We had a really good process, although extended because we did it twice. But early on, I made sure that we had people with disabilities provide input, and then took the samples that we got from the different vendors directly to somebody who is blind and a real good Braille reader, knows it really well, and immediately started pointing out things that even that I didn't even have any, like, oh, this is contracted Braille versus non-contracted. It's like, what? So somebody who had a pretty deep knowledge, and of the three sets of samples that we had, she just said, oh, this is by far the superior quality in terms of what they're producing, and strongly recommend you go with these guys. And she didn't, didn't know anything about any of the vendors or anything, only had the samples to go by, and that was really useful, so very helpful. Anyway, that's all I say.
That's great to be
yeah.
able to do that. Thank you.
Yeah, sure.
All right, do we have no questions?
I move to approve the agreement with Touch Graphics for tactile map installation at Switchyard Park.
I'll second.
Okay, and a roll call vote of all those in favor?
Kathleen Mills,
Aye.
Ellen Rodkey,
Aye.
Israel Herrera.
Aye.
Okay, motion is carried. And then Sean will stay with us for C3, which is the grant to replace the Banneker front steps.
Correct. Staff would recommend the approval for the grant agreement and covenant between the IDNR, the Indiana Department of Natural Resource Division of Historical Preservation and Archaeology, and Bloomington Parks and Recreation. The full project is for $30,000. The grant is a 75-25 match, which means they will pay $22,500, and Parks will add a matching $7,500 amount. That is to rehabilitate the upper limestone stairs at Banneker, which right now they're not in great shape. So we're hoping to get these repaired next year.
Okay.
Any questions?
No, it's nice to have a grant for this.
is nice
Yes.
to have a grant.
Yeah. Okay.
So I move to approve the grant agreement and of the grant agreement and covenant with IDNR for grant program to replace the Banneker front steps.
Okay.
I'll second.
And a roll call vote of all those in favor?
Kathleen Mills,
Aye.
Ellen Rodkey,
Aye.
Israel Herrera.
Aye.
Okay, motion carried. Thank you, Sean.
Thank you.
And then in C4, Leslie Brinson will tell us about some policy updates related to behavior hours and permitting.
Good afternoon, Leslie Brinson, Recreation Services General Manager. Staff recommends the approval of updates to several policies within the Parks Department Policy Manual. These policies help guide the process and procedures for both staff and the public. We did gather a committee of park staff as well as a park board member and input from legal to update several of these policies. The first policy that we updated was the suspension from property policy 2050. This was a small change, just added the word agents in the sections related to who can enforce rules. So pretty minor change. Policy 11080 is our behavior guidelines. This was a pretty massive overhaul of this policy in an attempt for us to create a comprehensive and centralized list of behavior guidelines for parks and facilities. So we had a lot of behavior that was in several policies. We kind of condensed and created one policy that we believe is a comprehensive list. Some of these address camping, destructive harvesting and foraging, loitering, interference with the safe passage of park users. And many of the guidelines, again, existed in additional policies that we've just brought into this one policy. So there are some pretty major changes in that policy. I'd be happy to answer any specific questions on that one if you would like after I go through the rest of them. Policy 11090 is now entitled Working with Children. We changed the title of this policy, which was Unattended Children, which really wasn't being used or as effective, and so it's now titled Working with Children. We added some information about staff ratios, the rule of three, and reporting procedures for any suspected child abuse. Policy 13040 is now titled Rentals and Permits. We combined the former facility rules, rental rules, with a special use policy to include one policy that has all rental and permit guidelines in one position. Therefore, we deleted policy 13070, facility rules, because we incorporated it into the special use policy. Policy 13080, park hours. We added information about the use of trails for transportation purposes only during times that are outside of normal park hours. So even though the park is closed, as long as you're using the trail for transportation outside of those hours, that is allowed. Policy 13090, animals in parks. This title was animal restrictions. We've changed it to animals in general in parks. And we included references on the Bloomington Code as well as leash dogs outside of them being in the dog park. So just fine-tuned that policy a little bit. Policy 13230, abandoned possessions, is a new policy outlining the procedure for handling unattended items on park property. The policy outlines the efforts to collect items for either lost and found purposes versus those that will be discarded. After 30 days, any item stored will be disposed of or destroyed. This policy, I believe, is similar to a BPD policy that now we have in our policy manual. Policy 13240, foraging, is a new policy that outlines guidelines for the use of city parks to protect the ecosystem and promote sustainable use of parks. This is, again, a brand new policy that just talks about what you can and cannot do as far as picking plants and where you can walk and
Rebecca could probably talk more about that one, but it's a new policy about sustainability in our parks. Policy 13140 was a paintball, air rifles, pellet gun policy that we have now eliminated because those rules are now included in the behavior policy. I think that's it. I'm happy to answer any questions. I printed the policy, so if you have any specific questions about them, I'd be happy to answer.
Well, I know it was kind of unwieldy before, and think there was duplication, and yeah. So, although I understand for liability reasons, though I was a little disappointed to see that you're not allowed to climb trees, but I understand.
Yes.
So, yeah. Okay, any questions or?
What is the meaning? What's the difference between dispose and destroy? When is the decision taken? After 30 days of, like?
Things that are destroyed, you wanted to take it? Things that are destroyed are things that are like soiled, that might be perishable, that might be of danger or a safety hazard to our staff or somebody. Those would be destroyed, as opposed to disposed of, which might just be like a sleeping bag that's been unclaimed for 30 days. Of course.
Leslie.
Okay. Is that right?
So I move to approve the policy updates related to behavior, hours, and permitting.
Second.
Okay, and a roll call vote of all those in favor?
Kathleen Mills,
Aye.
Ellen Rodkey,
Aye.
Israel Herrera.
Aye.
Okay, motion carried. Thank you, Leslie. And thanks for all the work looking at all those policies. Yeah. All right, and then in C5, Julie Ramey will tell us about the policy update for sponsorship and advertising.
Good afternoon. I am Julie Ramey. I'm the Community Relations Manager for the Parks and Recreation Department. And today I am recommending approval of the updated policy 8010 sponsorships that combines the former policy 8010, formerly known as solicitation of funds, and policy 8020, formerly named corporate sponsorships. As you know, our policy manual guides our activities and procedures processes throughout the year. And back in October 2023, about a year ago, this board approved updates to policy 10120, titled Advertising in Parks, which, among other things, provided official guidelines for advertising in parks facilities and on parks properties. Because program and event sponsorships are similar to advertising and often include on-site signage and recognition through parks' marketing channels, updates have been made to the existing policy to address the processes for soliciting and managing sponsorships, first and foremost clarifying the types of businesses that, without a formal partnership agreement with parks, are not permitted to sponsor parks programs. So again, the updated policy 8010 combines two former policies and tries to provide some really comprehensive guidelines. At the recommendation of our legal department, we added specific language regarding quid pro quo, that a business that is trying to acquire a contract or in negotiations for a contract for the Parks and Recreation Department, or really for any city department, isn't expected to sponsor anything, nor does a sponsorship guarantee a contract for a business that is that wants to do business with the city.
Okay, all right. Any questions for Julie about this?
So I move the approval of policy updates for sponsorship and advertising.
Second.
All right, and a roll call vote, please.
Kathleen Mills,
Aye.
Ellen Rodkey,
Aye.
Israel Herrera.
Aye.
All right, motion is carried. Thank you, Julie. It's like you changed your voice a little bit, so you could be the roll call person. Okay, and then Haskell in C6 has the agreement with Bluestone Tree for storm resilience tree pruning.
Good afternoon, Haskell Smith, Urban Forester. Recommend the approval of this contract with Bluestone Tree LLC for pruning various moderate to high-risk trees and tree limbs along our priority routes through Bloomington. Contracts not to exceed $25,000, and it is part of the federal IRA grant that was awarded in 2023.
Okay. Any questions about this tree pruning for Haskell?
So I move to approve the agreement with Bluestone 3 for storm resilience 3 running.
Second.
Okay, and a roll call vote of all those in favor?
Kathleen Mills,
Aye.
Ellen Rodkey,
Aye.
Israel Herrera.
Aye.
Okay. All right, motion carried. Thanks, Haskell.
Thank you.
Oh, yes. Yeah, we should. Yeah. Yeah. Okay, and then we do have report under the report section D1. Tim Street's going to tell us about the New Year strategic goals.
Good afternoon, Park Commissioners. Tim Street, Parks and Recreation Director. I have 2 reports for you this evening that we're going to talk about, and you can tell we've been doing a lot of work on goal planning and policy and cleaning a lot of things up here at the end of the year. That's going to continue into the new year as well. Thanks to all the staff who have contributed to these next 2 items. The first one is a report on Parks strategic goals for 2025. Board members will recall back in April, we presented to you our 2024 strategic goals based on our 2020 to 2025 master plan. Obviously, we don't have our final end of year resolution on meeting those goals yet. We'll present that to the board in the new year for your review. But staff from top to bottom have finished compiling these strategic goals for next year based on the last year of that master plan. And we present them now to the board for any comments, any review, any questions. Staff are here to help answer questions if there are any specifically. And again, these pertain to the 4 master plan goals largely. As you look at them, you'll see there's a column that actually identifies which of the master plan goals, these specific strategic goals, are helping us meet. So the idea is at the end of this master plan or in any given year, we could run a report and say, hey, here's what we set out to do. Inevitably, there's some things that change throughout the year, evolve, aren't able to be completed or shift as we go. But did want to give these to the board and thus the public to identify key things we are trying to do in 2025. I am happy to answer any questions if you have any or discuss our process on this.
Yeah, I'm just a little curious about the process because there's so many excellent goals on here, and some are very small, some are much larger or innovating new things. So how do you even start to think about what each, section might want to come up with?
Yeah, that's a great question. We have 40 full-time non-union staff working in our different 4 divisions, lots of separate areas, lots of separate business enterprises. And that leads to a lot of different goals. I think it's really great that each business enterprise area, for example, the golf course, the ice arena, community events, all of these different areas that we have, they obviously are going to have goals and thoughts on how to help their area better reach our master plan goals in a given year. So inevitably, that's how we end up with a lot of goals. I would say some of the bigger overarching goals that sort of meet the whole department end up in the admin section as broad goals, like complete our master plan. Obviously, that is a huge overriding goal that might be a little bit different from some of the specific ones that individual areas have, but I definitely encourage all areas to come up with, at least several relevant SMART goals for the year that we can track and use to sort of assess our performance and our work towards achieving our goals.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Any other questions for Tim about the list of goals here? No?
It looks ambitious and
Yes.
Just really proud to have such an amazing department where folks are excited about the goals that you've set and finishing out that 21 to 25 plan.
Yeah.
And go
It does look like a lot when it's all together.
Yes.
Yeah.
All right. Okay. And then Tim will stay with us also to tell us about the price schedule updates in D2.
Yes, I am still Tim Street, Director of Parks and Recreation. Price schedule updates. So just a reminder to the board, we always present this at 2 subsequent meetings. So the first meeting today, we present to you our price schedule for the next year for review. We're not asking for any approval tonight. This is a chance for questions. We have many of our managers and division heads here that can help answer questions or explain things if there are questions. Of course, that can continue beyond tonight on a one-on-one basis as well if there's things we need to better explain or clarify. I know I've mentioned as part of our master plan efforts early next year, we really want to look at financial sustainability and continue some of our work on some of our policies as it relates to pricing too, like our partnership policy. When do we have a partnership versus just a rental? Those are things we are still working on. We haven't gotten to the end line on a lot of those things yet. So for some of our pricing for year over year from 24 to 25, it's incremental price increases. We're still running things largely the way we have before. It's not necessarily that we're going to change every area, but we know there are some areas that probably next year, when we come back and do this, or even sooner than November next year, may have more significant price structure changes. For the most part, what you're seeing between 24 and 25 are incremental price increases, changes, things like that. So just to go over a little bit of background, we've got administrative services, adult sports, youth sports, field rentals, player fees, concessions. You'll see some incremental increases there, some incremental increases to Bryan and Mills Pool, punch passes and admission, not really any changes for special admission for the pools, some changes at Banneker, some changes in the cemetery, especially related to the scatter garden, some farmers market changes, and Becky Higgins advised me she's got one correction. I'll have her come up and explain in just a section there already. Community events, gardens is in there. Mobile stage rental, Frank Southern Ice Arena, golf services generally increases, shelter rentals, Switchyard Park, Twin Lakes Rec Center, youth programs, and finally just some miscellaneous fees at the end. So I particularly want to thank all of our staff that have worked on this to get this ready today, especially Michelle in our front office and Kim for working to compile all of this. And I think what I'll do is I will have Becky come up to explain the one change that we know we have in here, and then we can have a discussion with myself or whomever is needed to help answer any questions about these fee changes.
Hello,
Hello.
Becky Higgins, Recreation Services Director. Page 8, the only thing we did inadvertently was left out the April market in the changes, so the correction is just to make that match the rest of the season in regards to pricing. So it's been corrected on the iDrive, and Tim's got the correct numbers, but it just we didn't have a chance to get it to you. But it will be sent to you. It's really not that much different.
Okay, all right.
It's easy.
And I just wanted to, I'm pretty sure this is the case, but like, for instance, when you raise the price of a bucket of range balls or a pool admission or something like that, and you generally kind of check with other communities to see where their pricing is following, or?
Yeah, I could say, managers in individual areas, that is certainly on their radar is, for the golf course, for example, and I think Jason's here.
Jason's here.
I won't call you up unless you have something to add, but yeah, you want to? Okay. Put you on the spot. Sorry.
That's all right. Jason Sims, Golf Facilities Manager with the City of Bloomington, Cascades Golf Course. For all the golf fees, we checked areas surrounding golf courses locally and up in Indy. Even though they're an hour drive, we checked their prices and were very competitive with all those and tried to correspond with how they're going to raise prices and how we raise prices.
Okay.
So, yeah.
All right. Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
And I think the same is broadly applicable to other areas as well.
Yeah, okay. All right. Any questions?
I guess just another question about the farmer's market. I assume that I was not at the last meeting when the evaluation, I think, was presented. Is that correct? And so I'm just, data from the market study informed any changes as well? Like, can you speak to that a little bit?
Other than the pricing?
Yeah.
Yes, internally, we are now taking the information that we gathered from the advisory council and meeting actually this week to look at what changes we will implement for next year. But some of the really easy ones are changing the hours to end at 12:30 instead of 1. Leslie, what else?
Some communication
Yeah.
and data that vendors were looking for. We are gonna increase, looking at some accountability from farm visits to audits to what's on their application, asking for information are a couple changes that we're gonna make. And from a pricing standpoint, our pricing still puts us right in all those benchmarking communities. So we didn't move ourselves out of any of those kind of ranges either.
Yeah, great. Thank you.
The other thing I would just add is you'd see with the food and beverage, we're still going with the flat price, but we're just adjusting it a little bit.
Okay, great.
Yeah, and I just wondered about, like, in some of the pool fees, I mean, I always kind of pay attention to those, not only because I use the Bryan Park pool, but also just because I feel like it's some relatively cheap fun for kids in the summer. And I don't know, like the season pass has doubled in price, which seems like a lot. And the general admission going up by $2 seems also like kind of a lot. I don't know if the rationales for those are.
I'd want to go back to some of our sports staff specifically on that. I know they've looked at that. I don't have that information at hand, but Kathleen, we can certainly provide that to you and look at some of the rationale for that between now and when we're actually asking for approval.
Okay.
So
yeah.
let me take that to them and get back with you.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I know we'd also talked a little bit about, like, if there's that program, I can't remember what it's called, but
Stay cool.
the Stay Cool
Yeah.
is, I understand, if people have paid $140 for a season pass or something, and then it turns out 12 of the days is just free.
Sure.
I mean,
Yeah, and
you can't predict, but yeah.
That's an interesting thing we're talking about and working on. The Stay Cool program kind of came out of left field for us, and it was a
Yeah.
great thing for the community. We want to make sure that's congruent with our overall pool pricing and what we're doing with the pool fee waiver program as well. So as it worked out, there were kind of two different ways that you might get reduced admission. Certainly a scholarship type program, like a pool fee waiver program, helps us target subsidy dollars better where they're needed versus just a general, the pool is open and free to everybody. But there are some real merits to that as well, and just having a free open community day. And at the end of the day, I think the pool season is 80-something days, and 12 of those did end up being free this last year. We are trying to look at that this winter to get a more comprehensive grip on how those work together.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
But we can certainly, I'll have Keto and Chris work to provide some more information, and we can get that to you about that.
Okay, yeah, that would be great.
Yeah, I think there's a little, maybe not quite as big a jump in the ice arena as well, but just kind of noting that in that same vein. Well, the day pass, I think 6 to 10 is a $4 increase, and then there's about a $30 increase in the economy pass. So just something to think about. With the community gardens, it looks like we're going to one fee. We had one for an in-city fee and then out-of-city fee, and now we'll just have one fee. What was the prior, I guess it doesn't list, though, what the fees were prior.
We got rid of the out-of-city fees because they weren't being utilized. We weren't getting the people, so we just cut that out. So your question was?
Sure. That makes sense. I just, but is the in-city fee now the one fee, or
Yes.
what was, okay, and
It's increased a little.
Okay, so it did increase
Yes.
a little bit. It might just be helpful the next time we see this to just show,
I thought it
maybe
did, but
what
if it didn't, I can certainly get you that information.
yeah.
The out of city was 96, and so we tried to find a middle ground between the past in city and the past out of city. To find a middle number that didn't raise one too much, but didn't lose us too much money on the out of city.
Got it.
So that's interesting, because I remember the out-of-city price being on things forever, but I guess people didn't say, hey, I live in Bedford, but I'd like a garden plot.
Well,
or-
and slowly it just started to decline. We weren't getting them.
Yeah.
There are more opportunities for community gardens that are outside of city limits now. So we just
Yeah.
don't have that
That makes
influx
sense.
of people. Yeah.
Yeah, okay. All right, don't go away, Becky. Because Becky, Recreation Services Director, received the Distinguished Life Award of Excellence at the French Lick Conference recently, right?
I
Yes.
did.
Yes, congratulations.
Thank you. Very honored.
And the whole department was honored with Outstanding Agency Award of Excellence, so, yeah.
That is right. Yeah, it was really a tremendous honor and a credit to all of our staff, all 60 full-time and 300 and whatever, temporary staff that work for us in the course of a year. Our department really does a lot for the community, and, I think that comes across when you look at the strategic goals list and how we're trying to address climate and invasive species and keeping things clean and safe and approving security contracts. I think we play a really critical role, and every person has a part of that for sure. So, including you all. So thank you for the work you do to support us, and thank you to each and every one of our staff and volunteers that play a part in that as well.
Yeah. Did you know that you were going to win in advance, or was it like an Academy Awards reveal?
No, they didn't play us off with music or anything like
Oh,
that.
okay.
No, we did know. They let us know we
okay.
were going to win, and so we were able to be there and have a lot of staff there to share in the recognition, which was really nice. And I think it's cool that I understand it's judged by actually out of state. So IPRA has an agreement with another state that they sort of swap awards judging. So knowing that we were looked at by people from out of state who don't necessarily know us specifically, and the body of work was judged, and we were awarded. So that was really,
That's excellent.
really lovely.
Yeah, congratulations.
So it goes into the public record that we're the best Parks and
Yes,
Recreation
yes.
agency in the state of Indiana.
This year.
We'll take it. And you make our jobs very easy.
That's
Y'all are
true.
the ones doing the hard work, so thank you.
All right, so that is our section D, and then in E, we go to public comment. If we have anyone here in person who would like to comment, or anyone online. Online, I suppose you can raise your hand, and Julie
If
can
you are on the Zoom
call on
meeting
you.
and would like to make a public comment, please use the raise your hand feature, and I will unmute you. And I don't see any hands raised.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Chat comment? Julie?
It was just logistical.
Oh, okay,
I think it's been up there for a while.
yeah, okay. All right, then we will go back over to Tim for any final announcements.
Sure. And first, I'll just mention, of course, with that, the price schedule, the reason we do it in 2 meetings is it's a lot to look at and digest. So if board members have questions or things you'd like to explore a little bit further, by all means, please email us. And certainly when we come back in December with the final version for approval, there will be probably a few updates and tweaks. We already know the one in Rec Division. Let's see. We already talked about IPRA. We are moving into winter mode. Farmers Market is done. It is at Switchyard Park on Sundays now, on Saturdays through the end of the month. A lot of things are being winterized. We're closing down restrooms and water fountains. Most of them probably are, as we get freezing temps in our forecast. A lot of projects are close to completion, which is really exciting. The Gateway project should be wrapping up and lit in the next couple weeks here. We'll be able to reopen that cut through at the north end of Miller Showers Park. Hopewell Commons, we expect to have the fence come down sometime in December, and hopefully our temporary pickleball courts will be here about the same time. We'll be installing those. And our staff have done tremendous work on the RCA shelter. I want to give commendation again to all our community event staff. At the end of October it's not the end by any means, because there's always more events, but it's the end of a very particularly busy season of a lot of wonderful community events. So hopefully they can catch breath a little bit. We have opened bids, made bids available, rather, I should say, for our building trades park Phase 1 improvements. We hope to come back next month with a contract for the board to approve for those. And our next meeting is December 10th at 4 p.m., our normal time. We'll have a lot of year-end service agreements, potentially building trades, the price schedule to approve, our non-reverting budget to approve for next year. So we'll have a lot of important year-end items at that meeting. And then just a reminder that next year our meetings are moving to Thursday instead of Tuesday at 5 p.m. instead of 4 p.m. And the schedule is available out there. If any of you don't have it, I will be happy to supply that again. And thank you to Kim, who has been working remotely and working to get all of our packet together remotely. I think that's all I had.
Okay.
So next year, so we won't have any meeting after our meeting. It's from 5.
5 to 6:30 will be the scheduled time that we have. I believe Kim picked a night that there is not at least not a standing meeting in council chambers after us. It doesn't mean something couldn't come in and book after us, but generally we're not expecting to have meetings after us.
And Tim,
There's Kim.
that I have it scheduled for the 4th Thursday of the month.
4th Thursday of the month. Yes, thank you.
Okay. Yes, to hopefully maybe make things a little more accessible to people too, that it's not in the middle of the afternoon.
Right.
Yeah.
That was part of the reasoning behind moving to 5 p.m. instead
Yeah.
of 4 p.m.
Okay. All right. Okay, well, thank you. And with that, I'll adjourn the November meeting of the Bloomington Board of Park Commissioners.